There are a number of pastor friends and groups of pastors that I meet with semi-regularly. And every now and then in conversation with them, I'm reminded how grateful I am for this community. And I had one of those conversations this week. So I want to begin by just saying thank you for being a relatively healthy congregation. A community that welcomes people to share from their hearts and listens deeply and trusts that God's Spirit. Loving God, we are grateful for your Spirit and that you dwell among us as we follow the way of Jesus and invite all people to join us in working for your peace and your justice. Amen. So I mentioned to you before that I think of reflections in this space at their best as an invitation into conversation. And so when I spoke here 4 weeks ago, there were a couple points that people came up to me afterwards and said, I don't know if I agree with that or understand what you're trying to say. And I was thinking about one of those, and I want to start with one of those this morning. And to start in a place that might seem odd for today, as I'm feeling that same anxiety about the election, as we are coming to remember those who have died and that we have loved in this last year, as we are in the process of discerning where we will focus our energy in ministry, spirit congregation, some of those things go ahead. And I want to start with joy. And with something that I said last time that one of you wondered about. So I shared a quote last time from Barbara Holmes that said, suppose that at the entrance to heaven, there is a scale, not a scale to weigh good and bad deeds, but a scale to measure joy. Suppose our passage into the next life will not be determined by the number of souls saved, sermons preached, or holiness pursued, just joy. And someone came up to me after that and said, I don't think I used this word, but the sense that I have with James, isn't that a little Pollyanna-ish? Is that inviting us to kind of a false cheer in the face of some really hard stuff? And so I'm going to start from there in conversation, continuing that conversation from several weeks ago. We tried to talk a little bit about how I feel that joy is an appropriate container in which to hold the hard stuff that you're in. Dr. Barbara Holmes died October 15th. So a week after I shared this quote, her earthly life came to an end. And as the Center for Action and Contemplation, where she taught, shared about her death and honored her, they shared a quote video that she had recorded during COVID entitled, "Death is Not the Last Word." And in it, she expressed her faith that all will be well when the journey is complete. And I found myself struck by this juxtaposition of this person who exuded and talked about joy facing her own impending death several years ago in reflecting in this video, and then now having died. I mentioned to some of you before a rule of life that I created almost 3 years ago. And if you look at my signature block on my emails, you'll see that I try to live with joy, love, and presence. And this is a simple, not very crafty, because I'm not very crafty, image that generally sits behind me. If you see me on a Zoom call, and you look at the mantle on our fireplace, you'll generally see this. Or if I'm working not on Zoom, I'll have the window behind me and I'll be looking where I can see it. But as a reminder to live with love, joy, and presence. The rule of life that I developed has a few more words than that. And those are printed on the back of this. And one of the points that I wrote 3 years ago about joy was this. I want to acknowledge and remember that joy does not mean the absence of pain and suffering, but can be found even in the midst of it. I want to acknowledge and remember that joy does not mean the absence of pain and suffering, but can be found even in the midst of it. I think that's a message that is better lived than preached. I think that if you are suffering, it would not be wise of me to come and tell you to unfold that suffering. But it may be that I can tell you about some of the ways in which my own suffering, how I understand that to be unfolded in joy, and maybe some of that will resonate with you. As often, building faith, I think, is better than simply speaking. So what comes to mind as I think about this juxtaposition of joy, holding pain, and suffering are moments that were painful as I lived them. Being deeply homesick in the first couple weeks. I don't know. Weeping with my pastoral mentor on the phone in the midst of responding to a London bus accident. The death of loved ones. And yet, as I think back to those moments, what I remember most deeply are the new friends I look for who surround me and assured me that they were there with me. The sense of being held high, as I mental in my God, as I engaged others who were suffering. Watching children joyfully shovel dirt into the grave with a sense of not fully understood, but healthy recognition that this death was something larger. And so as I look back at these moments that were painful for me, I find myself smiling. I find myself holding them in a greater sense of joy that I was accompanied by people who love me and by God. And that's the container that I feel like joy can offer us to hold. Let me try to give another example to try to express something of what I'm feeling. A couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with a bicuspid aortic valve. So this is the most common congenital heart deformity that there is, and it means that my aortic valve has 2 ventricles rather than 3. And I was told that what that meant was that at some point in my life, I would need heart surgery. My heart would be weaker and would eventually get to a point, likely over decades, as long as I didn't do too much damage to myself in other ways first, that I would need heart surgery. Along with this comes annual EKGs to measure that my heart is still well enough to watch it. Well, this September, as I was driving up to Michigan for a conference and then this annual golf gathering with pastors, that is such an important moment of joy for my life. I had an EKG here at Fremont, and the results that I got back were worrisome. Worrisome enough that the cardiologist first said, "Can you come in?" And I said, "No, I can't right now." And so we had a telehealth appointment. And the process was that I would make an appointment with a heart surgeon, and I would have another test. And if that test confirmed what the EKG was, then my first meeting with our leadership council might have been saying, and I'll be having heart surgery and need a leave of absence, a couple weeks.
We would have left that on the agenda.
Okay. Fortunately, that wasn't the case. So I had that second test, and the measurement there was much smaller than the EKG one. And I'll have a meeting in a couple of weeks with the cardiologist to talk more about what that means, but for canceling the video with the surgeon and the monitor. The reason I'm telling you this, and one, I tend to try to live kind of transparently, and I have trouble I have to work very people need to work with me enough, privacy and making sure that we're careful. But I tend to share things because I value the community holding them. But the primary reason that I'm sharing this is that it was interesting to watch my observations of myself through this process. When I first got this news about the bicuspid aortic valve, with the reassurance that this likely was not something significant, but I still felt my mortality in a different way than I had, knowing that I would probably have heart surgery at some point. And then most interesting to me, and hopefully most relevant to this reflection, is that when I thought I might have surgery, I found myself at one point thinking back over my 49 years of life with the sense that if this is all that I have, I'm pretty glad for the choices I made. I feel pretty good about who I have chosen to be and how I've chosen to relate. That sense, which I don't think would have come to me absent this series of tests, provides a kind of joy within which the other things that I'm feeling, my deep desire to continue to live for another 49 years and to enjoy relationships with Christina and the boys and so many people, and to have time to read those books and to think about those questions. All of that is held in the sense of joy. That to this point, I feel good about my relationship with you and with our passage today talks about hope. As part of my doctorate of ministry work, about a year ago, I met with a couple groups of people to reflect on how they see me as a person and as a leader. And part of what I asked them was, do you see me living with love, joy, and presence? Becky was part of one of those groups, and she said, love and presence, absolutely. Joy, I don't know. I think of you as a person of hope. The joy is not the first word that comes. Part of that is that the joy that I hope is not, except maybe effusive and motive. But part of it, I think, is that I feel like I'm moving from this hope of what we cannot see, beginning to have a sense of joy in a felt presence of God in moments in my life. So that the hope that I am becoming a person of joy as well as hope. And I wonder if that's the difference between hope and joy. That hope is for that which we cannot see. And that joy is what we feel when we begin to see that, when we begin to feel that. When God's presence is something that we know is near to us. And for most of us, certainly for me, these are glimpses that you remember and hold on to, construct that container of joy within which we engage the anxiety and the fear and the pain that we also inevitably face. I need, Sasha articulated this earlier, I need to trust that there is a loving God who's bigger. I need to trust that wisdom has been present from the beginning and is moving in ways that are greater than my ability to participate in that wisdom. I need to trust that God can do more than we can ask or imagine in this congregation. I need to trust that God understands the groaning prayers of my heart better than I do. I'm not sure what I would do if I didn't have that trust. That container of joy in which I hold that anxiety. And I realize that we don't all have that. I play chess online, and every now and then, the person I'm playing will start a conversation. I have a profile, and it mentions being Mennonite there. And so this week, somebody started a conversation, asked like, how long has your sect been around? You mean Mennonite? 500 years. Why do you believe this stuff? And I talked to him, I said something about, I believe that the best of who we are, our loving relationship with one another, participates in a greater life. He said, well, yes, but you don't need God for that. I said, that's fine. He went on to also say, and I might be more inclined, and he quoted Nietzsche, so maybe philosophy is in my profile. But the point of both of them was like, and maybe I'd be more willing to think about this stuff if more of you people who call yourself Christians lived like Christ. We have a role in sharing this love, this faith, this hope with those around us. But this person illustrates that we don't all have that trust that I need. Maybe we don't all need it, but some of us this week, and myself at other points in my life, may desire to have that faith without being able to find it. Richard Rohr wrote something a few weeks ago that resonates with me. It's hard to hear God, but it's even harder not to hear God. By which he meant it's even harder when you don't have that faith in God to hold you in the midst of the hard stuff. I talked about my newfound friends at Okafor. And being on the phone with my pastor, solidarity with people who are working for peace and justice can bring a lot of comfort, even if we're not ready yet to identify that work we're doing as for God's peace and justice. That's a beginning. That's the beginning of the path that eventually brought me back to faith. Diana Butler Bass suggested that wonder is an antidote to fear. And so I think that if we don't have that thing, wonder might be a place to begin. In this world in which the space for the sacred, for wonder, has diminished, I think, from prior generations and times. I don't know if you all feel that, but I feel like we have less space in our culture for an appreciation of the divine, of the sacred, wonderful, awe-inspiring, because we believe that we control things more today. But she suggests that wonder is an antidote to fear because it points us towards something bigger. And as I've had conversations with others who identify themselves as agnostic, often they will affirm, yes, there's something bigger. They're just not ready to say, and that's this kind of God that you believe in, James. But there's agreement that, yes, there's a capital L. There's a capital T truth. There's something bigger than each of us. And so I want to end here by just sharing some poetry that I hope will evoke that sense of wonder. The first piece is by, and with a couple of these names, I don't know if I will pronounce them correctly. So, please correct me if you know. Rosemary Watola Trumber, Wings of Wonder. There in the field, you catch the flash of dark brown wings, the tail a startling white. Just before the great bird disappears into the pines and the heart leaps up at the gift, the thrill. You almost missed it. Once you stood on a long, rocky spit for an hour, watching hundreds of bald eagles fly and land, swoop and dive. How is it that only one bird, for only one sliver of a second, could invite a wonder equally strange? Such strange men. The way it takes so little to create a joy so large, so that seeing the eagle, you lift your arms from your chair as if you too are taking flight. As if you too might disappear into the soar. A week and a half ago, I was here on property for a partner's meeting, and afterwards I was standing back here with Emily, the urban agriculture director for Paideia, as a class of hers was composting pumpkins. And as we were talking, she interrupted and said, "Look." And as I turned, I just saw a bald eagle fly across into the woods. I don't know that I would have recognized it. I saw like head that was enough away. I would have been. But Emily said that was a bald eagle. And we shared this moment of wonder. Barbara Mahaney talks about how many religions, every Abrahamic religion emphasizes the coming of the dawn in prayer. And she says, nothing draws me into the arms of God more fully than standing here before the world starts its whisper. Nothing draws me into the arms of God more fully than standing here before the world starts its whisper. We'll have to get up a little earlier now to see the dawn that we have. It's back Often Christina and I will walk with Peter to his school. And for these past few weeks, the sun has been rising as we do that. Often when I drive up here to Atlanta, it's early in the morning to beat the traffic. And the sun is rising at some point on that path. Barbara goes on to quote Thomas Merton. Here is an unspeakable secret. Paradise is all around us, and we do not understand. It is wide open. The sword is taken away, but we do not know it. We are off, one to his farm and another to his merchandise. Lights on, clocks ticking, thermostats working, stoves cooking, electric shavers filling radios with static. Wisdom cries the dawn deepen, but we do not. Where do we experience wonder? How might that wonder lead us into the joy of God? What is the spark that has grown into faith in you, or that might grow into faith in you? My spiritual director is Nina Langto, and recently she told me about her own agnostic phase and how the spark that brought her back to faith was being in a Bruderhof community on Easter morning and getting up at dawn and walking out to look over a valley and hearing a brass band playing Easter hymns coming across the valley. And she had a sense there must be something real and remarkable for this moment to be happening. If we have faith that God is bigger than us, then as we remember those we love who have died, as we face the election this week, as we discern how we will share God's love beyond ourselves, then we can take joy in God's presence with us, in God's solidarity with us, and in the ways that we can do our part in the midst of that. Desmond Tutu wrote, God who is ever pouring out God's whole being from all eternity wants you to flourish. God wants you to be filled with joy and excitement and ever longing to be able to find what is so beautiful in God's creation, the compassion of so many, the caring, the sharing. And God says, please, child, help me. As you do this, hey Preston, you discover joy. If any of you have heard Archbishop Desmond Tutu speak, maybe you can imagine him saying, hey Preston, with that wonderful smile on his face. Joy which you had not sought comes as the gift, as almost the reward for this non-self-regarding caring brother. Faith can allow us that joy. And if we have more questions than faith, then let us begin with wonder, with curiosity, and lead into solidarity with one another who are working for God's peace and justice, whether or not we're ready for that. And perhaps in that shared journey. One more poem, and I'll sit down. This is from Hildegard. Sophia, you of the whirling wings, circling, encompassing energy of God, you quicken the world in your class. One wing soars in heaven, one wing sweeps the earth, and the third flies over us. Praise to Sophie. Let all the earth praise.